Hello, and welcome to Stretching the Word. I'm your host, Sister Valerie, and not today, devil, just not this year. As the Lord has said, no more in 24. So whatever your problems was, your mountains was, no more in 24. Because God shall show up for you. Now, it's January, and people have made all kinds of promises to other people and promises to themselves, and we're gonna get our summer bod together, and we're gonna not eat this, and we're gonna exercise, and we're gonna do all of these things. So that means what? That means we're going to have some self-will. We're going to have some self-control. We're going to have self-discipline. Right? Right. Okay. So, and then, when you think that's all good and you think about discipline, most of the time you think about, correcting a young person, and setting them straight and stuff like that. But do we think about ourselves being disciplined by anyone, or do we think about disciplining ourselves other than, we want to get our bods together for a season? But discipline, the Hebrew and the Greek word, when it's translated in the Bible, it means instruction, training, rebuke, reproof, warning, and correction. So we're going to be talking about discipline this week. And even as I said previously, we think about discipline, you think about, correcting a child or someone, but we never want to apply discipline to ourselves. But we, as being the children of God, or God's child, as we like to say, I'm God's child. You stick your chest out, I'm God's child. Well, if we're God's child, then we must bring some discipline into our own lives and allow Him to discipline us. So the first thing it says discipline relates to, as according to the Bible, is instructions. So you say, well, where am I going to get instructions from? Oh, wow. You don't know yet where you're going to get your instructions from? Yes, God talks to us in an audible voice. He does that sometimes. But when we don't hear His voice, you say, well, God don't talk to me. Oh, yes, God always speaking. He's always speaking. And we have 66 books, which we know as the Bible, that are left for us. Those are our instructions. So we do have instructions. It's not, sometimes you buy that click-clack furniture and they forget to put the instructions in there. So you just have to kind of, oh, let me see if this piece fit and that go there. And do I need a screw over here? But God never intended for us to go through life, trying to figure it out, because He had already worked it out. And He left specific instructions. So now, let's go to Romans, the 15th chapter and verse 4. Well, before we go there, we'll say that one to last. Let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 11. That's 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 11. And we're talking about instructions and where we're going to get our instructions from. We can get our instructions from the Bible. If no place else, if nothing else, we can trust the Bible. Why? Because it was written by holy men as the Spirit of God moved on them. They didn't just sit down and say, oh, let me think, what can I write about today? And come up with some fiction stuff. But they were moved by the Spirit of God, and they experienced some of these things. So 1 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 11 says, now these things happened. I'm reading the ASV version. Now these things happened unto them by way of example, and they were written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the ages are come. So they was written for our instructions, so we wouldn't have to guess about it, or so that we wouldn't have to go by trial and error. I'm telling you, it's a good thing when you can just read some instructions and know what to do, and ain't got to try to figure it out by trial and error. For one, I don't like trial and error because I don't like to keep doing the same thing over and over, and oh, it didn't come out right this time. Oh, I failed. So I would rather just have some instructions, read the instructions, follow the instructions to the T, as they say, or to the letter, and then I know, wow, perfect. It's going to come out the way it's supposed to come out. So now let's go to Romans, the 15th chapter. Oh, come on. Yeah, we're going Romans, the 15th chapter, and verse 4. Romans 15 and verse 4. And it says, for whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning. It's instructions, that through patience and through comfort of the scriptures we might have hope. So when we have these instructions, and we do have these instructions, we have them, and we have to be patient and learn them. So we no longer can say, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it, because it's written right there for us. Also, naturally, the first thing you're going to do for instructions is you're going to ask someone that's more knowledgeable than you. So most of the time we think, oh, well, our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, our teachers, we ask them the questions and they tell us, or we watch their lives and we pattern ourselves after their lives. Prayerfully, it's a good life, But there are examples. So there are our instructions, you might say, or they can give us instructions. Why? Because they have experienced these things. If they tell you, baby, you stay out there in that 90-degree heat and running around, and you ain't got no hat on your head, and you're not drinking enough water, you're gonna have a sunstroke. They know that. Why? Because they have experienced it themselves, or they have known someone that have had these things happen. So we can get instructions from our elders, those that are older than us, those that are wiser than us. So remember, discipline. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to get instructions.